Always plenty to talk about when we're joined by Steve Bone, but today seems to be a particular exception. So if we stray beyond our usual 25 minutes, please forgive. But it's all going to be well worth hearing. Steve, welcome, and let's begin with your thoughts about Middlesbrough.
Yes, very encouraging day, wasn't it? Unusually for me, I was going into that game not predicting a win. I normally, as you know from our weekly chats, when we're at home, I normally predict a win. I normally think we're capable of winning. After a little dodgy spell where we'd lost to Sheffield Wednesday, lost at Ipswich and drew with Watford, and almost lost at home to Watford, but for the comeback, I was a little bit worried, and I actually thought, well, actually, if we draw with Middlesbrough, that's not a bad result. They're top, they haven't lost, so let's be realistic. Let's not expect too much. Let's, if we end up 1-1 or something, that'd be good. But then, typical Pompey, it came to it, and Middlesbrough, as I say, came down having not lost before Saturday, and we beat them. And the universal thing that I saw people saying afterwards was only Pompey could lose at home to Sheffield Wednesday, who hadn't won for ages, and then in a couple of weeks later, the next home Saturday, go and beat Middlesbrough, who are obviously a good side, going to be up there this season. But I thought we made them look quite ordinary in the end. So yeah, very pleasing afternoon, and I thought we deserved it.
Great. Now that you've raised it, it legitimises me asking you this. We've looked at a wider inconsistency with Pompey than just those two results that you quite rightly mention. Of our 2 wins this season, of our 3 wins, I beg your pardon, this season, 2 of them have been against top sides. Middlesbrough are lying second. We beat them 1-0. We beat Preston 1-0, who are fourth. So we're beating teams who are thinking about promotion, but we're getting stuffed by teams who are down among the dead men. Sheffield Wednesday, Norwich, who are 19th. Is there a pattern here?
Well, there is. There's part of me that thinks it's kind of always been the Pompey way, really. They're contrary. They don't do the expected. They do the unexpected. You go back to last season, that classic week where Leeds came down, having lost very few games all season, on their way to the title, or so they thought, and we beat them. And then 3 days later, wasn't it, lost at Plymouth, who hadn't hardly beaten anything or anyone all season. So it's not a new thing. I do think it's a bit of a Pompey thing, and I don't know why it is. Do we raise our game that much when the top teams are in town, and do we get so complacent when the bottom teams are in town? I think there could be a bit of that, but that doesn't fully explain it, does it? But it's particularly the case at home, isn't it? So I wonder whether the home crowd, maybe when we're playing top teams, when Preston came and when Middlesbrough came last Saturday, there wasn't quite so much expectation. Therefore, the crowd weren't as tense, the atmosphere wasn't as tense, and maybe the players benefited from that. Whereas when we were home to Sheffield Wednesday, the crowd turned up expecting us to win. Maybe that transmitted a bit to the players, and it was a bit too much for them. I don't know if other clubs have this tendency, but it's a curious one. But it is very Pompey-like. You can go back years and decades, and there's always been a bit of that about us.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. One of the many foreign managers who came and went at White Hart Lane a while back berated some reporters for saying that Spurs were surely favourites to win their next game, and he went, "No, never, never. We are the underdogs." And then he went, "Never call us the overdogs."
Overdog. I like overdogs. That's a good phrase. But no, but teams don't like, or managers and maybe players as well, don't like to go into a game with everybody saying all their favourites, they're going to win this, how many they're going to win by, because it just puts the pressure on, doesn't it? And I do think it's a Pompey thing. Maybe it's a bit of the island mentality. We're better when no one is expecting anything. We like to spring a surprise. And it's fine, it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter who you pick up the points from. If we win 15 games this season and they're all against sides, they're against the top 15 sides, or against top 10 sides twice or whatever, we'll have as many points as we'd have if we'd beaten all the teams around us. So people like Pompey to get one over a team who come down. Perhaps there's a team who come down and think they're going to stroll it and don't.
So it's a bit early in our chat to start looking ahead to the next game, but it occurs to me that we are going to Leicester. They ought to be the favourites, and therefore maybe we'll be getting something.
It's not a bad game to have, and actually I think the home game after that, without jumping too far ahead of ourselves, is Coventry, who are flying at the top. Haven't they got a better goal difference than the next 10 teams combined below them or something like that? Scoring goals for fun, aren't they? Got 27 in 9 games or something like that. So Leicester away and Coventry at home in the space of a few days. The form book, the bookies would probably say Pompey, no chance. You're going to get stuffed twice, but we know different. And we mustn't sort of turn it right round and go there expecting to get points just because no one else expects us to. That'll fall flat on our face if we do. But it's Pompey's record this season so far will mean that fans who are going up to Leicester will do so with a little bit of hope that we can spring a bit of a shock.
I should know the answer to this, but I don't, so I'll ask you. Because the managerial merry-go-round has started spinning, is it still Frank Lampard's Coventry?
It is, yes. Yeah, he was under a bit of pressure last season, wasn't he, at one stage? They weren't doing as well as people thought they should be, having spent a bit of money. But he rode that out, and they got to the playoffs last year, I think, with him, didn't they? Lost in the playoffs, and have started so well again. That's something else the Pompey fans like down here, isn't it? They like a big name manager in the other dugout that they can send a few chants at. A bit of banter will be going back and forth, I'm sure. But no, they've had a great start, and that'll be a good night under the lights in a couple of weeks' time.
I don't know what to make of Frank Lampard as a manager. I want to like him. He was a good player, obviously, but he always looks so miserable.
He does, doesn't he? Yeah, and he's not done. There's a few players, isn't there, from that era who everybody thought, they were great players, good international players, very good club players, won things with their clubs, bound to go on to be good managers at top level, and it hasn't happened for them at the top level. Frank had time at Chelsea, didn't he? A couple of other top flight teams where it just hasn't quite clicked. Maybe he's found his level with Coventry. Maybe Championship is a good level for him. Same with Steven Gerrard to an extent. Hasn't quite happened for him managing at top level. Looks like he's possibly going back to Rangers now, doesn't it? Which I'm sure people in Scotland think is top level, but it's not English Premier League level. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. But yeah, Frank, the Coventry fans will be thinking that Frank will be taking them back to the top division the way they're going at the moment. But maybe they'll have a little blip when they come down to us. Let's hope so.
As usual, you make a very good point. You just can't tell from looking at a player when he's playing what sort of a manager he's going to make if he decides to have a go at it. Poor old Gary Neville, of course, was, a famous disaster, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And you look at some of the top managers we've got now and we've had in recent years, go back 5, 10, 15 years, and quite often they're people whose playing career was nothing to write home about, aren't they? That's often, and you can go back quite a long way with that. Some of the great managers of the sort of late 20th century, you would say that about as well. Two different things, isn't it? Playing and managing, I suppose. Maybe not many people are very, very good at both.
Now, you've got players and you've got managers, but the other eye-catching role is that of the owner. And I think we all had metaphorical black ties on after we heard the news that perhaps the most popular owner we've ever had, Milan Mandaric, had passed away. Yes,
yeah, very sad. Took me back a little bit when I heard the news on Saturday night. He was Pompey's owner from 1999 to 2006, his time as the owner coincided with my not completely but largely with my time on the sports desk at the News, and I actually got to know him quite well during that time. First time I met him was when he'd been at Pompey a couple of seasons, and he did it was a publicity stunt, but it was quite a good one. He went to the pub before a home game against QPR, April 2001. He went to the Newcombe Arms and just bought a few fans a few pints, chatted to fans, heard what they had to say, had his little say, and I was sent along. I was a reporter at the News at that time. I went along and had a little chat with him and just saw who he was talking to and what he was saying, and that was quite, even then, and probably as much as it would be now, quite unusual for an owner of a club to go along and have that sort of direct contact with your average fan, your man in the pub or your woman in the pub. But that was part of who he was. He was very hands-on. He was very approachable. If a fan stopped him on the way into the ground on a match day, he would stop and talk, and he would listen. He liked to do a little sort of Q&A session with fans when he could. He was known on occasions to go and sit in the front end for half a game. And with my news hat on, whenever we tried to contact him for a quote, if things were going badly at Pompey or if things were going particularly well at Pompey, he was always on the end of the phone, ready to talk to us. There wasn't much he didn't have an opinion on. And I think probably to the extent that certain managers who he had at Pompey in his time maybe got a little bit irritated by that, because he wasn't afraid to criticise the team after a defeat. But at the same time, he wasn't afraid to come out and praise them after a good win or after a promotion was confirmed and stuff like that. So he was unusual in that respect. But if you look at what he did for us, you can't knock it, can you? Came in to buy us out of administration, 1999, when for about sort of 9 months before he came in, we'd been looking very dicey. Would the club continue? There were times when it looked like it wouldn't at all. So he got us out of that sticky situation. Took a couple of years to sort of find his feet in terms of who he thought could bring us success, but eventually settled on Harry Redknapp, brought him in as director of football, and then appointed him as manager. And we all know what happened after that. Jim came in with Harry. That promotion team was built, and he took us into the Premier League, which a few years earlier had not looked possible. So I think Pompey fans will always remember him fondly. For changing the course of the club's history. Really, I don't think that's an overstatement to say that.
If there was a biography of his out, I would buy it like a shot. What an interesting life. And of course, he personally, all by himself, brought to Fratton Park one of the greatest footballers of all time.
Yes, I know. You still can't quite believe it now that Robert Prosinecki played for us, can you?
No.
And that was all down to his contacts very much. Yeah. I mean, before he came to Pompey, what an amazing sort of business life he'd had in Silicon Valley and everything. Hugely successful, built up a massive amount of wealth. And it's just such an active life, wasn't it? Because even after, when he sold Pompey, what would he have been? He would have been late 60s, I think, and he could have gone off into the sunset and retired, couldn't he, with the money he got from selling Pompey? But no chance of that. Not long after that, popped up as buying Leicester, took them on for a while. Had his time there, sold them, and then he popped up again at Sheffield Wednesday for a few years. So, what's quite interesting is that it does seem like people at all three of those clubs and fans of all three of those clubs, no one's got a bad word to say about him. And that's quite unusual, isn't it? Usually when if you think about any football figure, whether it's a player, manager, chairman or whatever, if they've been around a few different clubs, usually there'll be one where it just didn't work and they weren't very popular and they were glad to see the back of them. That doesn't seem to be the case with him, does it? It genuinely seems that wherever he's been, he's done well, and he's done a lot of good for that club. I saw one or two people saying, "Oh, he did well for us, but he sold us to Mr. Guydermack, and that didn't end very well." But there's quite a timeline between Milan leaving and Guydermack deciding that he wasn't going to put any money in, and our major problems then starting. There was a good 2 years really between the end of the Milan era and the start of the problems, towards the end of the Guydermack era. So I don't think anyone could have foreseen at the point where Milan sold his remaining share in the club. I don't think anyone could have foreseen what was going to happen further down the line. Football's easy in hindsight, isn't it? But no, I met Milan a number of times, did some good sit-down interviews with him. Always very entertaining, always had stories to tell, always had an opinion to give. And there aren't too many chairmen and owners around who are that open and approachable, really. Then, and there aren't now.
Yeah, he was wonderful company when he came to our local supporters club, Pompey's supporters club meetings. And I remember asking him how he came to know that Pompey were available. He said, "Well, I came to this country to buy Manchester City. But when I went, they said, no, we're not for sale." So I said, "Is there anybody else for sale?" And they said, "You could try Portsmouth." So he said, I got in my car and the driver said, "Where to?" And I said, "Somewhere called Portsmouth." That's the story,
It's a good. I don't know if it was quite like that, but it's a good tale, isn't it?
Well, the other thing he said,
maybe a bit of luck for us. Then, if he was here to buy somebody else.
I said to him, "So if you hadn't got Portsmouth," I said, "well, what would you have done?" He said, "Well, the other thing that I was thinking of doing was buying Boeing."
Okay, that's different, isn't it? That's a bit of a bit of a departure from a football club.
Yeah,
it's probably more financially sensible. Sorry, the dogs have woken up. Probably more financially viable to buy an airline company than a football club. I mean, people talk about investing in football clubs. You're not really investing in it. You're buying it and knowing that you're going to lose a lot of your money over time, unless you get lucky and are able to sell it at a profit a little way down the line.
I was signing up to a thing called LinkedIn. I don't know if you've heard of it or use it at the time. And out of deference to that remark, when it said executive positions held, I said CEO of Boeing. And it's still on my profile of LinkedIn. I'm CEO of Boeing, right? And I'm still getting contacts from people who've noticed me, who are things like chief jet engine designer at Harrier and what have you. It's weird. Anyway.
You should next time somebody gets into having seen that, you should tell them about the time you tried to sell Boeing to Milan Mandrick, and all the pieces will come together.
Absolutely. So that's Milan Mandrick, and he will live in our hearts and minds for as long as we do. So thank you to him for all of that. Can I get your thoughts now on something that I know you already feel quite strongly about, which is that the international breaks that we keep having. And this news, which has crept out, it's almost been kept a secret, that next season's international break, just a few weeks after the season begins, is going to be 3 weeks long.
I hadn't seen this until you told me just now about this, and it's quite, firstly it's quite sort of distressing, and secondly I don't quite see what the benefits are and who the benefits are to, really. So it would be a longer international break would mean we'd miss 2 consecutive weekends of Premier League and Championship football. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, which is a terrible idea, because it's bad enough when you just get the season started, you play your first 4 or 6 games, and then you're not playing for a fortnight. That's not a natural sort of progression into the early part of a season. And to then have 2 Saturdays off and have 3 weeks in total between games just seems ridiculous. And there's a lot of people, I've said it before, there's a lot of club fans that just aren't interested in international football that are going to be absolutely bored out of their minds then. Hopefully they'll use their time usefully and go and watch their local non-league club or something like that. But I suppose the one thing that will do, will that mean there'll be one fewer break during the season? If they're going to play, so they're going to play 4 games instead of 2 in one international break. That should mean fewer breaks overall in the season, you would hope, unless they're somehow conjuring up the idea of playing more internationals. But it just seems, I don't know, it just seems unnecessary.
I had a good long think to try and work out what's going on whilst I was walking the dog, and I put it to Pompey Sound's conspiracy theorist, who happens to be me, that maybe what with all this talk today from John Messino of the suggestion that we're getting so many injuries because of the physical demands that are placed on footballers these days, are they softening us up here for a winter break?
Could be, couldn't they? Yeah, bring in the longer break and then eventually move it to later in the season for a winter break. Because doesn't the Premier League have a little winter break now? Do they have a week off? Just that's not an international break in January or February, or have I imagined that? I'm not sure. I don't really like the idea of a winter break any more than an international break.
No.
I do think players are playing too much football, especially those who are involved with international teams. I still say international friendlies are a complete waste of time, and why does anybody bother with them?
Yeah.
Why don't, if they're going away with internationals, just play your qualifying games for your tournaments, whether it's your continental tournaments or your World Cup. I also think, is there not some way we can just have one big international break at the end of a season or something like that, or limit the breaks to one in the first half of the season and one in the second half of the season? I think any of those ideas would be a bit more palatable for people, for fans. Yeah. And after all, fans' opinions should count on this, but they don't seem to. It's just a mess at the moment. Here we are, just in the middle now of our second international break, and then I think 5 weeks' time we've got another one, haven't we? It's just so stop-start, and I do think, for players who aren't in international setups. Let's take Pompey. Most Pompey players will have played 3 games, played or been involved in 3 games last week: Ipswich, Watford, and Middlesbrough. No games for 14 days, and then another 3 games in 8 days at the end of that. Now, I would have thought that is a factor in why we're getting more injuries, because that's a silly schedule. If you've got 6 games to play, so Pompey will be playing, I'm just sort of making this up as I go along a bit, thinking aloud here. Pompey will have played 6 games between the 20th of September and the 25th of October, but they won't have played any games for a 2-week period in the middle of that. And that just seems daft to me, and it seems to be asking for trouble in terms of what you're asking players to put their bodies through.
Somebody's being greedy, aren't they?
Yeah. I think FIFA think the more international football and international tournaments they can devise and dream up, the more money they're all going to make at the top end. But there'll come a point where everybody says no more, thanks. It's too much. Even you got a 48 team World Cup to come next summer, and even that, although I love a World Cup and we'll all probably devour it when it comes, it just seems like too many teams, doesn't it? Too many games in 1 month. It's all about greed, I'm afraid. It's all pound signs and dollar signs and euro signs in front of the eyes of the people at the top. Not any of it is done with players in mind or with fans in mind, which is a shame.
Messino is saying in today's newspaper that the reason we have 9 substitutes, 5 of whom are allowed on the pitch, is because we really do need to give these players some kind of a break from what otherwise, he said, the matches are getting longer and longer.
Yeah, that's a fair point, isn't it? Because you quite often now get. I have read that piece and I thought it was quite interesting. Interesting how he says football has changed even in the past 5 years. I think he says, doesn't he? Because you've now got, if you get to the end of the first half and have less than 2 or 3 minutes injury time, it's a surprise, isn't it? And if you get to the end of the 90 minutes and you have less than 5 or 6, it's a surprise. So you're playing 100 minutes, which is almost 10% more than a basic 90-minute game used to be. Used to get a couple of minutes added on generally, or more if there'd been an obvious stoppage for injuries. So yeah, and he says that's why we're seeing more teams using 3 or 4 subs or 5 subs in some instances. To limit the sort of battering that some players' bodies are taking. It's difficult, isn't it? Because what it's happened. It's kind of happened naturally. It's evolved, hasn't it, into what we've got now, into a more physical game, into a faster game, a game where you need to be more athletic. And I wonder why it has. What is it? Has it developed like that because players are being coached to play differently? That with all the sort of pressing game and that sort of thing, and the hard running, or has it just happened naturally? Are they only being coached to play like that because that's the way football has gone, and that's the way it's developed naturally as people get fitter? Well, don't know. But the worrying thing is, how far will it go? How far will it continue to evolve in the same way?
There seem to be far more injuries than there used to be, and they're more complex, and indeed they seem new. I'm trying to remember where I was when I first heard the word hamstring. I think I was in my 30s, and yet now it's so fashionable.
Every week somebody's got a hamstring tear or strain, haven't they? Yeah, and the calf injuries as well. It's so common now, aren't they?
Tell you what nobody gets nowadays, and that's a cartilage problem, or indeed, I'll tell you what came and went in very recent times, the metatarsal.
That's funny you should mention that, because I was writing a story a couple of days ago about a Hastings United player who's got a broken metatarsal, or had a broken metatarsal. Was that the Wayne Rooney injury that almost kept him out of a World Cup?
And Beckham as well, I think.
And Beckham, wasn't it? Yeah, and we all had to
pray.
Look at the front page of the Sun and pray at the same time, and then he'd be okay or something. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, so injuries go in and out of fashion, don't they? Like other things do. But as you say, you don't get. There are certain types of injury you don't get now. It's all sort of medial ligaments and ACLs and MCLs, isn't it? It's almost like the language has changed that we used to talk about them. But yeah, much more prevalent than they used to be, and there aren't many injuries where people are out for a week, are there? They always seem to be out for a
8
month
to
or
12.
6 weeks at least. Yeah.
And people seem to pick up hamstring injuries doing nothing. I mean, Shaughnessy was right underneath me when he suddenly pulled up and went down against Wednesday, wasn't it? And he wasn't. He was almost speed walking. And I remember Tino Angerin, I think it was, who pulled his hamstring, walking across the pitch to take a throw-in. And Alex Robertson, of course, famously did his hamstring and was out in a boot and out for 6 months. And that was just there was nobody near him. He was backheeling the ball from going into touch. How does this happen?
If all these injuries had happened when people suddenly started to sprint, having been strolling after a ball, then you could understand it a bit more, couldn't you? It seems so innocuous, doesn't it? And you would think that footballers who train every day and keep very fit and have their exercise and everything else looked at closely they should be less likely to get these sort of injuries than you or I walking the dog, really. But it seems that it seems they don't have to be doing anything out of the ordinary to pick up these injuries. I mean, just going back to the Shaughnessy one, that was it's the most recent one that we all saw with our own eyes, wasn't it? And as you say, he was running. It was a gentle run to get to a ball to play it back to the goalkeeper, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Really, he wasn't going hell for leather. He wasn't going at top speed,
Hmm.
and that's a worry. And it's always a worry when the same player gets the same problem recurring, as Callum Lang has with his hamstring.
Hmm.
I think Shaughnessy and Lang have both had surgery now, haven't they? Which they hadn't before. So hopefully that will have made a further recurrence less likely. We can only hope when they come back they stay back.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a puzzle, and it's impossible for a manager to manage, isn't it? Because he doesn't know he can't plan a settled team. He can't say, right, this is my first choice starting 11 for the next 4 games.
That's a good point.
Because he doesn't know if half of them are going to be fit in 4 games' time.
There's no such thing as a first 11, is there, anymore?
No, not anymore. No. Can't be, can there?
I'll just throw this in out of interest. I've only ever seen one World Heavyweight Championship fight, and that was between a guy called Frank Bruno and an American called Tim Witherspoon. And Bruno was the most incredible specimen I think I've ever seen. He was about 3% body fat. His muscle definition was incredible, whereas Witherspoon was carrying a bit of weight. Anyway, Witherspoon took all the punishment, soaked it all up, and Bruno went down exhausted, not injured, but he was finished. I think it was in 11 rounds. And after the fight, Witherspoon said, "You need a little bit of fat."
Mm. Yeah, which you wouldn't think. You'd have thought you'd think it would be a negative rather than a positive, wouldn't you? Having a bit of fat in the top level, in any top level sport, really, you would think, unless you're at the darts, maybe. It's interesting, isn't it?
We used to have some big men playing for Pompey.
Yeah. Which I suppose it depends who you're up against. If you're up against big burly defenders, you need to be a big burly striker, don't you? Whereas if you're up against a defender who can cover 100 metres in 12 seconds, you need to be able to do the same. I suppose like any squad needs a mixture of sort of types in terms of sort of physiology. And I think we probably have got quite a good mix at the moment. There's a lot of clubs in the Championship that have got a lot of these big, strong, fast forwards, haven't they? And we seem to be maybe a little bit lacking in that area at the moment. So that might be something the recruitment people are looking at. But yeah, it's all interesting stuff.
I want to round off, if I may, by asking you, this is a fairly good point in the season. We've got an international break. We're more or less a quarter of the way through the season. Just to get a sort of a helicopter's eye view of Pompey this season.
Well, I think it's gone pretty much as a lot of people would have expected it, really. We finished 16th last season, and most people at that point, at the end of last season, thought, right, that's good, we've stayed up with a bit to spare, something to build on, we should be aiming to be better than 16th next year. I think my summer prediction to you was that we might finish somewhere about 11th or so if we got lucky. 11th to 14th would suit. I was a bit over optimistic last year and said 9th, and that wasn't ever likely going to happen, really. And I think so far 9 games in, we've won 3, drawn 3, lost 3, haven't we? We've had a couple of real disappointments, Sheffield Wednesday being the obvious one, and Watford to an extent. The way we lost our way in that game was another disappointment. But we've had some, you look at the 4 results that are outstanding for me so far are the home wins against Preston and Middlesbrough and the draws at West Brom and Southampton. I think that you look at those 4 results among a set of 9 games, if we're capable of that, then we're capable of repeating that sort of form for the rest of the season. And if we can, we'll be comfortably mid-table. We might even be able to look up and think about a top half finish. I don't think we're ever going to have the consistency that, or not this season, I want to say not ever, I mean this season, I don't think we're going to have the consistency you need to make a serious go for a top 6 finish. You need to be quite good. You can't afford to lose 3 out of every 9 if you're going to finish in the top 6. But I think we'll be fine. I think there's enough there. I think we've got a good squad. I don't think the squad is a lot stronger than last season's squad. There's one or two players we've lost that I still think we'll miss, but I think we've recruited quite well on the whole. Goal scoring, a bit of a worry possibly. Even in those games we've won, we've only been winning 1-0. There'll be days when that hurts us. Bishop needs some goals and needs some help, I think, up top. But on the whole, I thought it was interesting that John Messino said before last Saturday's game against Borough, he said, although you don't want to put too much on one result and on one game, he was speaking before the game, and he said, if we lose this, you're going to be a bit disappointed with that first set of 9 games. If we draw, you're going to be thinking, well, that's okay. We've won as many as we've lost. Whereas if we win it, we'll be thinking, yeah, that's a decent start, and that's how it's turned out. I think most people are happy. We're 13th in the table, little way off the bottom 3. Lots of promise and lots to build on.
Brilliant, Steve. Thank you so much as ever.
Thank you.